how did I get here? Not really, I'm just kidding. But I did wake up in Milwaukee this morning. I looked out the hotel window and the sky was blue, the sun was coming up, and I thought, the last place I want to be is in the middle of a big city. I'd much rather be out on a river or a lake or walking through the woods. Now, I was asked to come and give a welcome this afternoon, but I decided this morning as I was contemplating these things not to give a welcome, but to say thank you, because I love to be around the water. I love to spend my time next to a lake or next to a river. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Look where he is. What else would he say than just that? So let me offer a personal testimony for the next 2 minutes, and then I'll let you be the judge. But I grew up in a small town in southern Arkansas, Camden, and just down at the end of my street was what we call the woods. And through the woods ran a small creek. And my earliest memories were walking down to the creek when I could sneak out of the house, and I'd have with me a piece of string and a safety pin and some bacon I'd snuck out of the refrigerator. And I was sure I was going to catch a crawfish. I don't think I ever did, but all the fun was in trying. My most special place that I would go to as a child growing up was the deer camp with my dad. Going to the deer camp was bigger than Christmas in my mind. And alongside of the deer camp was Tulip Creek, about the size of the Plover River. And to spend whether summers or winters there, I didn't care, as long as I could go to the deer camp. My father was a house painter. My mother didn't work, so we didn't have a lot of money. But my father, one day, came home with a small ski boat. Now, he didn't buy it. He traded it in work. He painted a gas station for the boat. It had a 40-horse Scott motor on it. He decided on that because he knew at full throttle I wouldn't be able to turn it over. And he was right, because I sure tried. But I spent those years learning to water ski on the Ouachita River. Now, it never occurred to me that there might be logs in the river. The snakes didn't seem to be an issue. And the trot lines, well, I just thought, I didn't think about it. That was what I experienced as a young child. But then, as I grew a little older, finished high school, spent some time in the Army, and when I was out of the Army, I came to work at the police department at Independence, Missouri. Now, that is not too far of a drive from the Lake of the Ozarks. And so I found the lake, and I would spend as much time there as I possibly could. One of maybe the most beautiful lakes I've ever been around. Hundreds of miles of shoreline. Beautiful trees, just spectacular. One day I found a boat for sale. It was up on 50-gallon drums. It was a 1939, I better tell you this was in the 70s. It was a 1939 Richardson cruiser, a planked hull. For those of you who may not know what a planked hull is, it's a wooden hull made of planks rather than plywood. I didn't know if it would float, and I didn't know if it'd start, but I bought it for $500. Put it in the water in a slip, in a sling, and 2 days later, by golly, it was floating, and we got it started. And I spent as much time on that lake with that boat as I possibly could. But as life would have it, work and job took me elsewhere. And so I had to sell the boat. And I spent a good part of my career in Georgia and Oklahoma. And then we got a chance to come to Wisconsin. And I had read or heard that Wisconsin actually has more lakes than Minnesota. I'm thinking this is a good deal. They forgot to tell me that most of the year they're frozen. And I don't much like snow. But I have been ice fishing since I've been here, or at least I've been out with some guys who were ice fishing. I count that as the same thing. Then a couple of years ago, the wife and I took a weekend trip up to Door County. Turned out to be an incredibly expensive trip because I developed a fatal case of boat fever. I'd had 2 earlier, but hadn't had one for 20 years. So I spent a year looking for a boat, one that I could sleep on, but those big, fancy, shiny ones, they cost a lot of money. A lot more than an educator could ever afford. But I found another antique, this time a 1974 trawler. And so a year ago, I bought that trawler. And I've now spent as much time as I can on Lake Michigan and a little time in the water lab on our campus, trying to get the water tanks straightened out on my boat. But I'll tell you, this last part of the story here has not yet transpired, because on my bucket list to do the first year I retire is to become a looper, to do the Great Loop. And if you're not familiar with that, you can start anywhere, but I'm going to start Sturgeon Bay, down through Lake Michigan to Chicago, through downtown Chicago, if I can get below 17 feet, to the Illinois River, then into the Mississippi, go past St. Louis, turn left, into Kentucky, Kentucky Lake, the Tennessee Tom Bigby Waterway, through Tennessee, Alabama, and Mississippi, and come out at Mobile. And then you take a corner across the Gulf of Mexico. You better check the weather before you leave. And then down around Florida and around the Keys and back up the intercoastal waterway on the eastern coast of the U.S. I want to go by Washington, D.C. and see the Jefferson Memorial from the water. And then I want to motor into New York Harbor, past the Statue of Liberty, and then up the Hudson River and the Erie Canal, and back into the Great Lakes. So I'm here today to say thank you for what you do day in and day out, so that I can do what I love to do. And I would day in and day out if I could just get by with it. But your work is so important to this state and to this country, to preserve and maintain and promote our lakes and our rivers. Because if you didn't do it, who would? Well, we're a better place for what you do, and I am most grateful. So I'm here today not to say welcome, but to say thank you, and thank you. Have a great rest of the conference.